In the same church in Chicago, about the same time, a woman came who was the wife of a dentist. And she came because she'd heard that I had a ministry of deliverance. So in an after meeting, she came for prayer, and I discovered that she disliked her mother. In fact, she said, my mother's 500 miles away from me, but I find myself every day arguing bitterly with her in my mind. Well, I said, that's one of your problems. Prayed for her. She got a measure of relief. She looked at me and she said, am I free? And I gave my standard answer, which is, it's not my business to give you a certificate. And if I did, it wouldn't be worth the paper that it's written on. Well, that didn't satisfy her. So she looked at me again. She said, am I free? I said, I can't tell you. But to tell you the truth, I have the impression that somewhere or other you crossed the line into forbidden territory. And she said, when? I said, I can't tell you. Well, she got rather angry with me and went away. But the couple that had brought her were friends of ours. And they said, well, listen, don't get angry with Brother Prince. Pray about it. See if it's true. So then she told me the rest of the story herself. In fact, she gave this testimony in public. She said, next morning, alone in her apartment, she prayed, and she said, if there's any truth in what Brother Prince said, will you show me? And immediately her mind went back to a church of which she was a member, a Methodist church, before she knew the Lord personally, and how in this church, the most spiritual woman in the church had come, and she was spiritual too, believe me, had come to her and said, may I tell your fortune? I think read your palm. So because the woman was noted to be the most spiritual in the church, she said yes. The woman told her fortune, said, you're going to have a child and it will be born dead. Later, she had a baby and it was born dead. The doctor who delivered the baby said, I've never seen a case like this. It was choked by its own umbilical cord, which was twice wound round its neck. There in the apartment, meditating on this, which the Lord had brought back to her memory, she realized what I've told you, that that woman in that Methodist church had predicted Satan's destiny over her life, and by believing it, she'd submitted to it. And in fact, in a certain sense, that woman was the murderer of her baby. A good, respectable, church-going murderer. And so she renounced that evil thing, confessed all that as a sin, released herself from it all by herself, and she said she had a violent physical reaction alone in her room, was set free. Since then, she's had a baby that was born healthy and lived. People say, well, Brother Prince, I went to a fortune teller, but I just did it for a joke. I didn't mean anything by it. I'll give you Don Basham's answer to that one, which I think is good. He says, well, what would you think if I said to you, well, it's true, I did commit adultery with my neighbor's wife, but I just did it for a joke. I didn't mean anything by it. You see, one is physical adultery, the other is spiritual adultery. And I believe the Bible indicates spiritual adultery is more evil than physical adultery. I want to talk about one other type of personal problem which I found to be very, very common. Really, we've only touched on one root so far, which, and in order to explain to you what I'm aiming at, this root is the occult. It's involvement in Satan's supernatural realm. My experience today is that 3 out of every 4 persons in the United States have in some way or other been involved in the occult. I was in a meeting, a CFO meeting, if you know what CFO, Camp Father Stout meeting, and a Methodist minister who had real understanding was preaching on the danger of involvement with Edgar Casey and Gene Dixon. And I happened to be at the back of the congregation listening. And at the end of his message, he said, now how many of you have read either one or other of those writers, been interested in them? At least 1/3 of the people in the congregation immediately raised their hand. They were all professing Christian church members. So, let me say frankly, in my personal opinion, the greatest threat to the United States and the one thing that can destroy this nation is witchcraft. It's unbelievably powerful. It's unbelievably sinister.